Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we're once again live at DevCon in the beautiful city of Amsterdam. And today, we're talking all about on-site truth in construction. So materials waste data that's often scattered across paper slips, photos, and spreadsheets. We're going to explore how capturing that info at the source can help teams cut mistakes and rework. We're going to tighten up payment and audit trails and make sustainability reporting feel a bit more credible. To help me tell that story today, I'm joined by Brittany Harris, the CEO and co-founder of Qualis Flow, or Qflow, and Marta Bouchard, Director of Sustainability Solutions here at Autodesk. How are you both feeling today?
I love the city of Amsterdam, so it's great to be in one of my favorite places with technology and partners all coming together to talk about these things, so it's a good day.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Brittany, how are you feeling?
Yeah, great. I mean, my husband's half Dutch, so this feels a bit like second home. We've been here a lot, so it's lovely to be back in Amsterdam, and I've just been so energized by the conversations so far these last couple of days. Just so many new ideas and meeting amazing people. So yeah, very pumped, I think.
Yeah, DevCon is a good experience. This is the first time I've had the privilege of coming and just excited to be here and hearing everything that people are fired up about. So Brittany, I want to start off, before we get into some of the bigger themes I mentioned a minute ago, can you share what exactly Qualis Flow is, or Qflow, how your team got started, and tell me a bit about the impact that your teams bring to construction projects?
My background's in civil engineering. So I started my career as an engineer working for big design consultancy organizations like Arup and Mott MacDonald. I met my co-founder Jade, who's also from construction, but she was working at the coalface with Skanska, building like mega infrastructure projects. We met in New York, of all places, super random. But we bonded over this like love-hate relationship we have with construction, because it's this amazing industry that literally builds these incredible buildings, but it's inefficient and it's not sustainable. And me as a designer was spending so much time trying to make these, big infrastructure projects more sustainable, more efficient, and then releasing them to the contractor and sort of hoping they built what we set out. And Jade at the other end was on site trying to track and report exactly what was going on and say, yes, we've done this, or this has been the impact. But that data was just going into a filing cabinet and it was not being used to drive better construction. And so this sort of big gap between these parts of the industry and parts of the process was not only really frustrating and demoralizing for us, but it was also resulting in a really inefficient and unsustainable process. After a couple of years of being friends and coming to places like Amsterdam and Copenhagen and, sharing a few beers on a pub, we were like, man, we should probably try fix this. And so in 2018, we founded Qflow with this sort of core mission of how do we help construction be more sustainable and more efficient? And it was really a very broad question, no technology in mind. Like we didn't start with, we must use blockchain or something like that. It was very much, just how do we solve the problem? And we interviewed hundreds of people across the industry. And the thing that kept coming up was materials and this sort of issue with, we don't always know what's on site when, we don't know whether it's the right stuff, we don't know whether it meets the design. And so we end up doing a lot of rework because we build with the wrong things. Then someone finds it and we're like, damn, we've built on top of it as well. So we have to rip it all out. And this whole thing was just compounding, not only impacting cost and program, which they really cared about, but also impacting sustainability, generating insane amounts of waste, emitting and embodying way more carbon than was necessary. And so we were like, okay, if we can solve this one bit, if we can fix materials management, then we can have a really material impact on, the construction industry's footprint. And so that's what we set out to do. It was very much like pulling on the thread that's come off a woolen jumper. You start pulling and you're like, oh my God, this is a long thread. And everything sort of came out. And so we started capturing exactly what materials come onto site in a super, super simple way. So all the site teams have to do is take a photograph of the delivery slip that comes on with materials and the waste transfer note that goes off with waste. So idiot proof in the nicest way possible. But then we were using the technology at the time, which was machine learning and AI and big data, to extract all of that information, clean it, structure it, and learn from that data to say, okay, is this compliant? Is this what you wanted? Is this the right spec for the project? And then flagging to them if something's wrong or missing so they could take that action. And so we started with that sort of simple piece of, let's capture the data, let's make it accessible to the sustainability teams and help them use it to ensure responsible sourcing and waste compliance and carbon reporting and all these things that we cared about. But all of a sudden, the finance team got hold of the data and they were like, well, we want to use this to verify invoices and check that we're paying for what we've got. And we're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, there's no reason why you can't have it. Here, have fun. And then we started having conversations with quality teams and they're like, well, hang on a minute. We want to know whether this material's fire safe or whether we need to trigger a COSH or sort of health and safety assessment on this material, or whether it's going to, whether there's been a substitution and whether that's going to affect commissioning of this project. And we're like, oh my God, this data just does all of these things once you put it into people's hands. And so now we're on this incredible but slightly terrifying journey of taking the sort of over 15 million data points that we've captured over the last 8 years and figuring out how we put that into the right people's hands in the right way so that they can get more value from it. They can manage cost, they can manage quality, they can manage program, and hopefully in the future unlock things like the circular economy and all of this other stuff. That's why the partnership with Autodesk has been so exciting, because it links into that design element, which is where I started. And now I can see how we can close that loop, because I would have been using Autodesk at Bureau Happold and at Mott's, and I would have been so relieved to see this construction data coming back in and saying, yeah, they have actually built what you said they wanted to. And you're like, oh, yes. And that's where we want to get to.
I love your enthusiasm about everything your team is doing. It's really thoughtful and interesting just to hear all the different directions and trajectories this data capture has impacted in ways you didn't anticipate. I love to hear, just kind of in contrast, how has this been managed historically, or has anything been done with this information at all? Like, what does a typical materials delivery look like on site when Qflow isn't in contention? Like, what does the chaos look like?
It's kind of done in two ways at the moment. The first thing is lots of bits of paper and a very stressed out graduate trying to collect all those bits of paper and type them either into spreadsheets, typing them into other sort of software reporting platforms. So there's been this boom probably about 15 years ago of these sort of software platforms that were very manual data entry, but they were about aggregating and analyzing the data. So some are using that, the majority are still using spreadsheets. But still what we find across the board is that they are purely for reporting. They're not for taking action. They're not for driving real tangible improvements in the way that the organizations are operating or actually learning from what's going on. So the status quo is very much humans and spreadsheets, and then tick the box of we've done our compliance bit, we can put it in a bucket and forget about it. It's not a how do we learn and iterate and grow in this process.
I appreciate that baseline too, and especially your point about the lack of action beyond just reporting on all of this information that's available. It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done for folks, and it's exciting that we're able to implementing something more intentional to enable all these different workflows that you spoke about during our first question. And Marta, I'd love it if you could kind of give me some context on why does information so often get lost or distorted as projects are moving from design into construction specifically? I think that's a big gap that we've talked about before.
Yeah, it is. I'll zoom out a little bit from only materials just to acknowledge that there's just, like you said, a lot of information gets lost. There's sort of three big buckets that could fall into. There's people involved, there's a bunch of processes they follow, and there's different technologies that they use. Let's start with the people. There's a lot of people that go into making an idea turn into reality. Sure, there's architects and builders at the simplest, but there are so many specialists involved, from landscape to acousticians to, specifiers that need to just actually prescribe what happens. So there's so many people that need to get pulled together to create that information. The processes that they follow, you name it. You brought up spreadsheets. Okay, everyone loves their spreadsheets. But there's so many ways that people work, and you have to kind of get their processes to work together. They have to collaborate, and they have to sync. They have to move that information around. And that brings up the technology piece. So many bits and tools. And yes, there's paper, but there's also so many forms of technology. And so things get lost and distorted because think about how much can go wrong with all of those systems trying to work maybe in an integrated way, but maybe they're not quite there yet.
Yeah,
and so
not.
Yeah, it is seriously difficult. So to your point around like how amazing is it that buildings get built, if you pull back the curtain and know how much goes into that, there is so much room for error. And so that cuts across everything. But then you bring in the materials that is ultimately the components that are the asset that gets built. There's just so many dimensions of information that could just not get from A to B.
I think also what's happened in the industry recently is that the demand for information has gone up dramatically. So if you just take sustainability, 10 years ago, no one was reporting on carbon, embodied carbon in particular. No one really was thinking about it. And so that whole data layer around what's the embodied carbon of this material? How much have we used? Where has it come from? That wasn't being captured. But now we're asking teams to report on that, as well as, so in the UK, we have the upgrade to the Building Safety Act, which now mandates this thing called the golden thread of data, which says you've got to really accurately report and quality control everything right from that sort of early design stage through construction, through operation, to assure people that you've built something that's fire safe. It's very specifically sort of focused on this fire safety piece, but that's a whole other layer of data and reporting that they've got to do again. Yeah. And so the amount that these teams are having to report and capture and actually sort of verify throughout the whole process has gone up tenfold, probably even more. So the people involved, they may be, having to fill out one short form at the end of each day. Now they're probably filling out maybe 10, 20 in 10, 20 different systems. It just gets really mental. So it's not just that the existing systems that we have were already hard and complicated. What they're being asked to do now is even more complex, even bigger at a much greater scale. And so it's just compounding and making things even more risky, and more data is getting lost.
I have tremendous empathy for the folks that are in this situation, because the expectations have changed so dramatically. Yeah. And for the most part, it sounds like the tools largely have not changed. And so there's a lot of manual effort that needs to go into facilitating a lot of this reporting and data tracking, and the means to use this information to make choices. It's not easily accessible. And so I'm encouraged to hear that your team is trying to kind of bridge that gap to facilitate these conversations and all the goodness that, you were a bit surprised by, as you mentioned earlier, that's coming along with that. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and experience on when teams are trying to fix all of these challenges traditionally that you're discussing here. What are some of these big barriers that you've seen, and where do you encounter the most resistance? I think we've touched on it, but I'd love to hear if you have any more thoughts there.
The first and the most important, I think, for all of construction technology is ease of use. We're working with amazing, really dedicated people, but they are not technologists, and a lot of them aren't tech native. We have an aging workforce in construction, and so the way that we design and implement technology needs to be incredibly empathetic to the chaos of a construction site, and it is an incredibly dynamic, incredibly challenging environment. So ease of use and that sort of simplicity piece is absolutely the number one key, and if you can overcome that barrier, you're on a really good pathway. I do also think that as technology is becoming more widely used, there is a desire from the industry to kind of skip ahead to the outcome without doing the heavy lifting or the hard work of really getting the good quality data to get to that outcome. And so I had a hilarious / frustrating conversation with a client the other day where they've been using Qflow for 3 years, and one part of their team absolutely loves it, and they've shown this dramatic improvement in waste compliance from, they were about 45% when they started Qflow, which is terrifying. They're now at 98%, and that's because the data has been not only automatically correcting some things, but they've also been able to act on it, and they've improved the performance of their supply chain. Now they wanted to take this elsewhere, and one of their team was like, yeah, but why can't you just go and talk to my suppliers for me and fix this? And I was like, I can point you in the right direction with this technology, but we're not at the fully agentic piece yet, and I'm not sure you would want an agent going and talking to your supply chain without your say-so right now. And so there is this sort of wanting to skip ahead bit and just get to the outcome without fully investing in the really good data and then acting on the data and appreciating that the acting has to come from them still, for now at least, while we're sort of really getting the agentic piece working. And I think that's a barrier that is a new barrier, and it's really exciting because it shows that they are engaging and they can see that tech will deliver outcomes. But there's, you kind of got to softly build up that confidence and that robustness in the technology, which is something that's come up a lot at DevCon as well, is the critical role of really robust systems. So, we're building infrastructure that if it falls down, it will kill people, and we really need to be conscious of that as we grow and build.
I would also add to that we're talking about a dynamic of basically analog and digital, right? Yeah. I mean, at its absolute simplest, there are humans that have real hard skills, and then there are tools that are trying to speed that up and make that smarter, faster, and connected. And there's still a pretty big gulf between those two. I mean, construction still needs, as you said, skilled laborers. The workforce is shifting. There's a dynamic around the future of work and how are we going to prepare to like bridge that gulf. And we still are going to need physical, analog systems to get things built. But we're trying to do that better and smarter and more efficient and more sustainable through the use of tools and technology. We're still collectively kind of bridging that. But, that is how we're going to have to move into the future, is closing that faster.
Yeah, and it's really a partnership between technology and humans. And
Absolutely.
It's always going to have to be that way in construction. The idea that tech is going to just solve all of construction's issues without any kind of human involvement is absolute lunacy.
Yeah, the worries of people being replaced in the industry because of all of the tools are unfounded, because I think the jobs are going to change, and it's more of an augmentation conversation.
Yeah.
But I also really like your point about the information and dashboarding and reporting moving into a more actionable state. It's one thing to get that information after the fact and go, okay, this is how we did and how it went. It's an entirely different thing to go, this is information that I can use to make change during the course of my project instead of just looking retrospectively. And Marta, I've got a question for you. I want to click into sustainability here too. When project teams are trying to measure and improve their approach to sustainability, what information is most often missing or unreliable historically?
Yeah, there's a couple things in there. First of all, I'd say that when it comes to sustainability, there's some subject matter expertise that's needed. That can sometimes actually be daunting for folks that maybe don't feel that they've been trained or they have the right skill set or knowledge to even, act. So that's a barrier that we need to overcome, which is sort of, the knowledge being more accessible. The access to information, even if you're comfortable maybe not being an expert, but you need to go access that information, you need to go do research, you need to ask a consultant. That can be a barrier of like, I need to get the information. And then the last thing I guess I'd say is being able to know how to use that information, right? So even if you have someone on your team or you have maybe the means to bring in a specialty consultant, all those things are needed to then act on sustainability. You got to know something, you've got to know how it relates to all the other pieces of, the construction project. You sort of alluded to this before when you brought up the golden thread and how there's like a life and health safety component. Sustainability is a thing, meeting the basic program of the project or, what is the asset supposed to do? And then there's countless other objectives that buildings need to meet for humans to do work, to live in those spaces. So I guess what I'm saying is to bring sustainability along with all of these other dynamic complexities, it can sometimes just be like one more thing that you have to manage. And so the more we can integrate that into part of, this multifaceted, very dynamic sort of scenario planning process that is ultimately the work of design and make, the more we can make sure those sustainability outcomes are just part of that multifaceted world that we all love to be in.
I love this though, because it's becoming an intentional part of the process and no longer that layer of add-on and additional work. And I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen for some folks who aren't in the trenches. But to your point, I have tremendous empathy for the folks who aren't really sure where to start, because there is a lot to consider. They have access to information they may not have had historically, and they might not feel empowered to make decisions based on that because it might not be their background. And so I think we're bringing the tools in to facilitate those conversations and make sure that they're in a more intentional and well-positioned place to act. But if folks haven't been historically, I can understand why. It's a tall order to step back and go, okay, we're going to start counting all of our carbon, and we're going to go through and really lock into our materials, because just the act of building is pretty damn hard.
Yeah, the act of building is pretty damn hard. And then, yes, you're absolutely right. There has been this kind of historic trend that I'm really excited to overcome, which is that sustainability is some bolt-on to sort of the core objective. Like, let's also do sustainability, if we can afford it. And then it comes with all this like, well, I'm not so sure, so maybe it's going to cost more, or maybe it's going to be, I'm going to need more people. And, people just haven't fully brought that together. I think there's a huge opportunity now, especially because of the use of digital technology. We're talking about how the simple act of, how do we bring in just photography to capture that data, to sync it up so we can make actionable insights on what we see. That to me is one of the brilliant ways in which we close that gap. and make it feel more accessible to more people. So they could say, oh, there is information. I don't have to either say no or just, feel like I can't take an action here because we're bringing that data to their fingertips.
And I'd love to learn more about the owner's role at this moment as well. And can you tell me more about when owners are talking about sustainability and performance, are they getting more specific about what they need to see, like documentation and verification that might hold up from design through handover instead of just kind of bigger, more broad promises? I'd be interested where their heads are at these days.
That's a good question. I'll start, but I'd love to get sort of your perspective too. I mean, owners do have a very strong position in all of this, right? They're often sort of the orchestrators of time and budget and objectives, and they ultimately own the final decisions. What we're seeing is many owners, this has been going on and it kind of has its own hype cycles and trends, of course, but by and large, owners are saying, we want to be doing the right thing for the environment. We don't want to, create negative impacts. How can we be more sustainable? There are many ways that they can set those goals, either through a regulatory drive, it's a mandate, it's a requirement, they have to do that, or they're maybe piling onto that and saying, we're going to go above and beyond. We're going to set a corporate mission. We're going to try to be better than this target. We want to be net zero, energy, water, name your metric. Those are all ways that owners are starting to put a stake in the ground and say, we really want to achieve this. But then there are ways in which that gets documented that is still, I'd say, many flavors, let's call it. Like sometimes a certificate at the end is enough, which can result in, as you were alerting to earlier, maybe it just feels like this kind of last-ditch compliance exercise where you're like, oh, I have to show that I met that thing, so I'm just going to add it all up in the spreadsheet. Whereas there's also much more, I'd say, progressive ways to think about sustainability that the owner can say, let's start at the beginning. Let's set this performance target. Let's track it throughout. Let's make sure we're meeting these milestones and we want to monitor the progress. And that's a much more holistic way to really achieve that outcome because you have the end in mind, but you bring it in at the beginning, which is always sort of an ideal state. But then specifics to how do you track? I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that at the more granular level.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we have in this industry at large is where the responsibility and the mandate sits. And we have these mind-boggling circular conversations with contractors and owners all the time where the owner's like, well, we pay the contractor to do that and, the contractor's going to just deliver the building and that's what we get. And I don't feel like I can tell them what to do. I just want them to build the building. And the contractor says, well, we're not going to do that unless the owner tells us to. And so you end up with no one saying, this is what we want, this is the outcome we need. So there isn't that prescription around the level of data, the level of sustainability, the level of quality control. A lot of these things just fall through the gaps because no one's quite sure who's going to own the mandate, but also who's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so what we often end up trying to explain to owners and developers is that you're the one left holding the baby at the end, okay? It's the asset that you are paying them to build that you then have to operate and own. And if you don't have an accurate picture of what went into that building, if you don't understand for certain that the way that it was commissioned actually meets the operating efficiency that you were trying to achieve, then it's going to cost you more to run. And what's even worse is when you come to decommission or sell that building, you don't really know what it is you're selling or taking down. So you can't, leverage things like the circular economy and reuse of these assets. And you can't actually potentially demand that premium to say, look, here's a really clever digital model of your building as well as the physical one. And I think that's where we're getting to as an industry is this slow march towards digital twins where we say, okay, we've got this physical asset, but here's the digital relationship to it where we can manage energy efficiency, we can consider deconstructibility, we can look at how we can retrofit and refurb and repurpose buildings. And so I think it really does need to move up the value chain with the owners, the ultimate sort of asset owner, taking a much stronger stance on I expect this level of information that's going to be clear and granular and it's going to enable me to manage this asset properly. And we are seeing that, particularly with infrastructure assets at the moment. And then if they are able to put that line in the sand, then the contractor's obviously saying, okay, I've got the tools and systems to do that. And then having a really honest conversation about what that's going to cost and how it's going to flow through. I just want to come back to a point you made earlier, because one of your team said to me, that green is green, which is like an old saying around sustainability. And I think at some point along the way, around 2020, when sort of sustainability had this huge renaissance and people were saying, oh, carbon reporting is going to be a board level thing and we're going to really focus on it. At that point, sustainability sort of stepped out on its own and became a side thing, like a separate entity with a separate team. And people forgot that green is green. And actually, if we are more sustainable and more efficient, we're also often more profitable and more cost effective. And somehow that got broken. Now, one of the things, like a couple of years ago, about 18 months ago, sustainability kind of got smacked in the face by the economic crisis, and everyone took a step back and went, okay, we'd love to be sustainable, but only if it doesn't cost us more. And that mindset has kind of really screwed sustainability as a mission, because people think it costs more. It doesn't have to. And actually, if you drive operational efficiency, if you reduce your rework, you're saving a mountain of time and money. And that green of not being wasteful, not being excessive in your consumption, is very green in the sense of you're saving time and money and you're reducing your carbon footprint. And so although it's heartbreaking to see sustainability be sort of battered in the media, it's actually really encouraging for me, because I think it's getting back to a place where it needs to be, which is embedded across the entire organization, where everyone owns their little bit, where finance, quality, the board, the health and safety team, they all fully understand that if they are more sustainable, or if they're more efficient and they're more cost effective and they're safer, they are also more sustainable, and it's embedded in their way of operating. And I think that will help not only drive the sort of owner's ambitions, and owners will feel more comfortable asking for it, but will also deliver far more robust outcomes than whacking a green wall on something at the end of a project just to get an extra few credits on your certification, which we still see. And I'm like, guys, get a grip. Come on. What are you doing?
But I love everything both are sharing here, because I think it really comes down to intention. There's a lot of deliberateness and responsibility for the owner to really decide what their expectations are and what they're wanting from both their contractors and what they want when they operate their facility at the end of the day. To your point, Brittany, digital twins don't happen by accident by any means. And most of these choices need to be very clearly specified early on in the journey. The former proposal manager or tender manager in me is screaming right now, because I've seen so many poorly written RFPs that didn't have any of this included in it, where it was a very simple copy and paste from an old proposal, or very scarce on details and expectations. And today, I really think the RFP is a tremendous opportunity for the owner, because they get to set that expectation. They go, this is what I want. I want a digital twin at the end of my project. I want this level of sustainability management through the conversation. This is the level of reporting I expect throughout the conversation, throughout the build, and what I want at the end. And now when you're looking at all of your bids, they're all going to be one-to-one, where you can manage and evaluate them more effectively, because all of the GCs who have bid on that proposal now have put that information into their proposals, and that it's there, and it's going to be paid for and covered in the cost. And I have empathy, because now that adds more review, that adds more intention into that RFP writing. There's more work up front that goes into that. But I think the end asset, especially if you're planning on owning the building for 20, 30, 40, 60 years, and it puts you in a better position to operate the facility as well. But it's not easy.
I think it comes down to that point around if they're planning to own it and operate it for 20, 30 years. And it's whether there's an alignment of, the actual long-term values. So that upfront investment in getting that data is worth it if you have that long-term investment in the building. Too often, we still have this very build and flip mentality to the industry, which exists for a reason. But in that case, if you're buying a building, you should also be asking for that data and say, well, how do I know? You tell me this is BREEAM excellent. You tell me this is fire safe. Where's the evidence? And I think something coming back to the golden thread of data is this concept of an intelligent client, and actually, or an informed client, and saying, I know what I should be asking for, whether you're the actual asset owner or whether you're just buying a pre-existing asset, is starting to demand that level of transparency and accountability, which we've been all too comfortable not to have. And then we see these horrific examples of where infrastructure and buildings go horribly wrong. Yeah. And, the person left holding the baby is like, oh, damn, that's very expensive. And who do I blame for this? And without that evidence chain, it's only you, really.
Yeah, and I'd love to look a little bit forward for a few minutes. So let's imagine a future where job site materials and waste data is consistently captured and trusted. What do you think becomes possible that feels unrealistic today?
So there's two halves. There's like, how do job sites look different? Had a hilarious example from a client where they had basically a delivery of insulation coming in. They'd had to close the road to get this crane on site, to lift the insulation to the roof. They got it up to the roof, and one of the site engineers was looking around and thought, that's a lot of insulation. Turned out they'd had double the delivery arrive. And so they had to close the road again, reorder or rehire the crane, take half that insulation back down. And the cost of not having that materials management process in place was a couple $100,000 because they had to do all these like process things. So it wasn't just the cost of materials, you had the physical cost of all the processes around the road and the crane and so on. Another example, which Jade shared yesterday on stage, was, the wrong aggregates being installed under a warehouse. 6 months after completion of the build, the tenant was in, the building slumped, and they had to close a portion of the warehouse. The tenant then claimed back to the ultimate sort of warehouse owner over $1 million of lost revenue because they had to close that portion of the warehouse, all because the wrong material was installed. So the first part of, if we actually get better at managing materials and that flow on site, is we don't have these incredibly expensive, unforeseen issues, both during the construction phase, but also as an asset owner. But the thing that I get super excited about is actually 20 years down the line. So that building's been in use, that asset's been in use for ages, it's been chopped and changed and transformed. And then you come to say, actually, we want something completely different here. We need to deconstruct it. We need to repurpose it from an office to a residential block. How much of that building can we keep in place? And while you have no idea what's in the fabric of your building, it's an incredibly risky and expensive thing to do to try and retain the structure. Whereas if you have this detailed record of the materials that went in, if you have that digital twin, all of a sudden you have this overwhelming opportunity to enact what we would call the circular economy, which is you would take bits out, refurbish them, sell them on to someone else, or just refurbish and put them back in. And you can save a huge amount of cost as well, because the expensive bit of the circular economy is actually the deconstruction and the pre-demolition audit. Once you've got the materials, they're kind of paying for themselves. So if you can skip that bit, you can actually then start making a huge amount of money by not having to buy virgin materials. And as international supply chains become a lot less resilient and we see the impact of climate change on material prices, that's going to be so critical to people in 20 years' time. So the thing I'm most excited about today is what it's going to do for us in 20 years in terms of the resilience and the robustness of these buildings and the supply chains that help us, build the future effectively.
No, what you're really talking about is value. You're transferring
100%.
value today and preparing for the value for tomorrow. I mean, it's that simple. It's like not losing the value.
Green is green. And bringing it back.
I love that, though. And I have so much empathy for somebody who's trying to reuse materials from a building, too. And I've heard many examples of, say they had this beautiful facade or really interesting and magnificent elements when they tore a portion of a building down to retrofit it. And they've tried to get somebody to reuse this. They go, hey, we have this available. We can use it as part of your facade if you build a new building and make it have a really unique feature. And the one example that I was told directly is they tried to shop these beautiful pieces around and nobody wanted them because they didn't know what they were made of and they didn't have enough context. And they ended up grinding them down into aggregate to use as fill. And it's that's just so sad because especially old historical buildings, there's so many features that are beautiful, but adaptive reuse in our current environment is hard. And I have empathy for it. So I love this example of just having this more 360 conversation and enabling people in the future, because now you're really setting them up to be successful. I mean, the house that I own and live in, it was built in 1960, and every wall that I need to open up is always a surprise and a mystery. And thankfully, the prior owners of my house were very kind to me. I haven't found too many surprises that have upset me too deeply. But you think about a building that was built in 1910 or 1850 or something that was older and used materials that aren't even around anymore. How many surprises are you going to find when you're digging into there? So this 360 conversation and very future focused. I think we can do better, and it's exciting that we're starting to put ourselves in a position where we can do better in a way where historically it's been much, much harder.
But I think that frustration and the fear that you have when you start unpicking your own home and thinking, God, what am I finding here? Where are these cables coming from? Just think about the fact that we're building buildings today, not documenting that.
Yeah.
And we're screwing the future you, when 20 years time, when they come to sort of do their own rework, by actually not knowing this either. And so it is an investment in the future. It's trying to create value for someone that, we may never meet. And I think we've become very short-termist in our mindset as humanity as a whole. This is getting very philosophical, but we have become deeply short-termist, and it's why the climate change sort of whole agenda has struggled, because people are thinking about the next 3 to 5 years, the next electoral cycle, instead of the next 50 years when I'll be retiring, hopefully a bit sooner than that. You never know, actually. But actually thinking about, okay, what are they going to be dealing with? And are we setting them up for success? And at the moment, we're not. And we need to be really honest about that we're choosing not to invest in those future generations and saying, no, we're going to leave you blind as well. Enjoy unpicking your house. And actually, we should be a bit more realistic about how do we build that sustainable future, not just the sustainable today, but the sustainable future. And it requires better, more transparent information.
Right. You can do it for today and set yourself up for success for
Which
tomorrow.
is why it's so magical, because you can also prevent the mess ups on site today and help the future, which is why it's such a no-brainer, but we're just not there yet.
But I think that's why the technology, the moment of technology we're in right now is so exciting.
Yes.
Because I get why somebody's not planning for the 50 years from now, even though I might not agree with it, because it is hard. It is complex. And being able to empower and make these processes to do that documentation and have this digital twin and capture the information and materials that are in the building in a way that is so much more seamless just makes that choice to go, okay, we're going to document this more intentionally, far more easier to make, instead of somebody looking at the laundry list of things they already have to do to build the building to begin with, and then go, well, but wait, there's more? We don't want more. And thankfully, more, I think, becomes a whole lot more appetizing than it has been historically, which is exciting for me. And Marta, I've got a question for you. I think you mentioned AI earlier, and obviously AI is buzzing for a lot of folks right now. And there's a lot of noise in this space for construction, which I think is equal parts exciting for some and also potentially overwhelming, especially for folks who aren't as deep into this technology. In your world, what would you say is a practical use of AI that makes teams perform better or improves the outcomes tied to their work, especially in the world of sustainability?
Yeah, practical uses of AI, well, they seem to be exponentially increasing. I can't even keep track. I mean, I'll come back to something I said a little earlier about, when it comes to sustainability, there can often be a fear or a sense of inadequacy around just the knowledge, right? Someone just feels like they don't have the knowledge. One really practical use of AI right now is easier access to knowledge. Yeah. This sounds like a no-brainer, but let me just give you a really specific example that wasn't that long ago. You were trying to pick a material for a building. Let's say it was insulation. Which insulation should I pick? Well, it has to meet so many different criteria around acoustical properties, thermal properties, fireproof, Oh, and also let's make sure it has a sustainable footprint. So it's maybe a lower global warming impact as a material type, because insulations can be made of plastic, or they can be more natural in how they're produced, like rock wool or mineral wool. So it used to be a multi-hour, multi-day research effort to educate and inform the selection of insulation material of one of hundreds of thousands of materials, to say, you have to choose insulation, you have to think of all these things, and now here's one more factor to consider. We can do that information gathering and information comparison and trade-off assessment so much faster, and you don't necessarily need to rely on countless experts, specialists, where suddenly it feels like this big, daunting task. So AI, first of all, is just creating information awareness and at your fingertips in a way that is priceless and saving time and saving money. Then what that does, and this is not anything new, but it is then freeing humans up to go use their intelligence in new ways, right? Outsource the simpler things that you can gather and now process and orient and then make those trade-off and decisions faster, and then focus your human time and energy into the things that are much more complex that can't be done by machines. And so I think there's some practical terms that are shifting in how we operate, are sort of, our frame of reference for how work gets done is fundamentally shifting under our feet. And if we think about how do we outsource the stuff that would have otherwise been time consuming or complex, or I was just fearful of how to even tackle the problem, get that done faster with AI. And then, of course, as AI builds more technology and system integrations, that's just going to accelerate even the more compute intensive and even human intensive work. So we are on an upwards journey of how that's going to propel us into the future.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The sky's the limit right now as far as empowering folks to be more intentional with how they use their time. And I think that's just some of the more straightforward uses that I'm excited about as well, because we only have so much time in a day. Demands on all of us, regardless of the work we do, are ever increasing, and anything we can do to streamline that to more quickly be able to access data and make these decisions, I think has an outsized impact on the way we get work done. Brittany, I'd be curious if you have any thoughts there to add as far as the joys of the moment of AI right now.
I mean, I certainly agree with everything you said, and I think it's about automating the big researchy crunchy bits and then letting the humans use their amazing creative minds to collaborate with each other and do more. I think the limit right now is human, and how proactive we are in the way that we engage, but also how effectively we can scrutinize AI as well. There is still a real risk that we just take for granted what it says, and we're like, yeah, that's totally true, and actually don't take the time to look at the references and think, okay, how robust is this? And so we have this amazing opportunity to leverage the massive sort of research and data collating and analyzing capabilities of AI. But what we need to curate as humans to really make the most of it are the skills and the knowledge to be able to question it and say, does that sound right? Yeah. A really simple, weird example of this is my mother-in-law sent us a video of some people building a greenhouse. And she was like, isn't this incredible? Look how quickly they built it. And my husband and I, who both work in construction, looked at it and went, that's definitely AI. But it's because we have the knowledge and the experience to know what construction looks like and say, yeah, super cool video, but definitely not real. Yeah. But his mum, who obviously has no experience in this, would just take that as verbatim. That's definitely what just happened. And so I think we need to be really careful from a human element in the way that we interact with AI to continue to curate those questioning skills and think, does this sound right? Yeah. Do I have the knowledge to scrutinize it? Who might have the knowledge to help me assure myself that this is the right way forward?
You make an incredible point here, and I think especially if you have domain expertise about something tied to AI that you review and evaluate, it's much easier to parse and go, okay, does this feel right?
It's a sniff test.
There's a skill set that's involved in reviewing and analyzing data, and I think this extends well beyond construction as far as just being able to look at an asset and go, does this feel right? And I think up until now, if you had a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of time to review anything generated by AI, you could probably figure it out. You go, okay, that doesn't look quite right. They have 6 fingers, or that building's not constructible in the way that image looks like. What's kind of scary, to be honest, is we're kind of rolling over a cusp right now where the image generation and video generation is getting so good that it's going to become harder and harder to step back and go, okay, is that real or not? And I think the implications of that go well beyond anything that we're going to be talking about here today. But we kind of keep digging in on the philosophical, which is an exciting trajectory for Digital Builder. But I appreciate your point there.
I would love to just add that it's really a two-sided coin. Like the point I was mentioning before about sort of access to information, what that's about is democratizing information, right? And when it comes to sustainability and more people doing it. So we definitely need to democratize sustainability and the ways in which those decisions get made and information gets transferred, data gets moved around, the more, the better. But on the other side of that same coin is the trust, the quality, the skills, the knowledge, the actual industry expertise. That does come with real lived human experience. And so we are really in this amazing, as you said, kind of overwhelming and sometimes scary, but also exciting times where we have to keep this balance on sort of both sides of this coin of great, more people can lean into it. We can democratize these opportunities and we can accelerate certain processes. But at the same time, we absolutely have to maintain a sense of caution, a sense of curiosity, sort of a true human element around making sure we're bringing rigor to it. And ultimately that's critical for that long-term value, right? So we don't just all lean back and be like, I'll just let the robots do it. I mean, it's not that simple. So I think it's just about holding that holding that tension between these two realities we're living in right now.
I couldn't agree more. So I have one more philosophical question for both of you today. And Brittany, I'm going to throw this one your way first. What's one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
So I think it actually comes back to what we've just been talking about. My favorite tool is, I don't know if you've come across it, it's called the 5 whys, which is where you just constantly try and dig down a little bit further, asking why, like why something exists. So you try and get to the root cause. Ironically, I really try and avoid using the word why itself because I find people find it very triggering. It's sort of like, you're questioning me. But having that level of deep curiosity to not just take the first answer as the answer. And I think this becomes super critical when we think about building technology for construction, because if you ask a client, what is it you want to do? Engineers love to solutionize, and they'll be like, I want this exact thing. And you're like, okay, just explain to me why. Like, where's that coming through? Like, what's happening to make that frictionful? What's the outcome you're trying to achieve? And like really, really digging down in through those questions. So the sort of framework of the 5 whys, like really not taking that first answer, getting at least 5 layers down through different questionings, I think is so powerful because it means that what you're building is a lot more robust. You've got greater confidence that it is the right kind of solution, solving the right breadth of problems. But also that, you're not relying on possibly faulty information that comes out in that first instance. And so I think that curiosity piece is something that is super, super critical, particularly in the age of AI as well.
I love that. And it's really digging down to intent at the end of the conversation. Yeah. And the whys are asked with good intentions as well. It's like, okay, like I'm asking why to make sure I'm giving you what you need as the owner or a client that you work with. So I love that. That's a endless curiosity, I guess, to solve the problems that you're faced with. Marta, how about you? What's one tool you use in every project?
Yeah, well, in addition to getting to what end, which I love, I mean, I maybe have 2 tools. One is really about listening, right? I have to say there's a real importance in just making sure that like you're paying attention to what someone else is doing. And, I don't always have the answers. Shouldn't assume I do. So maybe that person has something. The other tool that I have to be honest is a good old pen and paper. There is something around, I don't know about you guys, but digital everything. I really find that I can be very grounded when I can just sometimes jot it down. And that like human connection around how information is being shared. It's like, I need to listen. I need to make sure I'm paying attention. I certainly don't know it all. I'm try to be really humble in that. And then also just write it down because that little act of pen to paper feels really grounding for me and how we can take action.
Very tangible. I can't take notes longhand anymore. My handwriting is so bad and my hand just cramps up. But to-do lists for me in particular, like written down, especially for my personal stuff, like just being able to cross it off and go, okay, like that feels very real. That's good. Also, do you add things that you've done that weren't on the list to the list to cross it off? You go, okay, I feel good about that.
100%.
Yeah, that's a great trait of my ADHD in particular is like, all right, we went on a side quest today, but we're going to add it and feel good about it. Well, I appreciate both of you so much for joining me today for this conversation. This has been incredibly enlightening and philosophical in a way that I didn't even expect at the beginning of our conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everybody out there listening, of course, you've likely figured out this is Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. If you are interested in reaching out and you've got a question for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. We are in an absolutely beautiful location right now, so you should check out this episode on YouTube if you haven't taken a peek because it's worth watching. And until next time, goodbye.